Hey guys, so today on Slightly Offensive, which is Elijah Schaefer's channel, there was a debate that I participated in along with three other people to discuss if the LGBT folks on the right should be included in the MAGA movement. Now, if you haven't watched this debate yet, I will link it in the description below. It got a little heated because one of the participants in the debate has actively advocated for my husband being deported, even though he is a permanent resident of the United States. But that aside, I wanted to just take a few minutes to talk about what I think about Christians in general, because this is something that comes up every once in a while, where, first off, I'm not a Christian. I'm not a Christian now. I have never been a Christian. I was raised in a family that was Catholic. But my parents, after they went through, all sorts of years of Catholic school, my parents elected not to baptize my brother and I in the church. We never went to the church growing up. So we were like a little bit of the black sheep in the family in that regard. It was just not something that I was raised with. And, I didn't even know until I think I was 16, 17 years old that my father was an atheist and my mother was pretty agnostic about the whole situation. So they never forced their religious views on us. My parents felt strongly that my brother and I should be able to choose to join a religion, worship in a religion or not. And they didn't really let us know what they thought until we were much older and could start to form some of those opinions for ourselves. So this was not something I was raised in or ever taught, except for my grandmother, who, fun fact, actually my favorite books growing up, and I still have them to this day. They're sitting in my basement, but I do still have them, were Bible stories. My grandmother used to read me Bible stories and I loved them, and those books are actually some of my most cherished possessions. Now, that's not to say that I haven't, I flirted with Christianity briefly in my early 20s. And it was around that time that I actually, and this will probably surprise a lot of you who think that I hate Christians for some reason, because I really don't. There were a good 4 or 5 years of my life when I was in my 20s that I was rather obsessed with the historical Jesus. Now, that's not the religious Jesus. I was obsessed with the historical Jesus. I have read, I mostly focused on the New Testament for obvious reasons. I was looking at it as a historical document rather than a religious text, but I've studied many different versions of the New Testaments. I actually have like binders full of folders where I was comparing different versions and trying to weed out who said what and all this stuff, and trying to figure out like which is the correct version and all this stuff. I have mountains and mountains of books talking about Jesus from a variety of perspectives, some of them secular and some of them religious. And this was something that I was really, really into for a good part of my life. In fact, I came very close. I came actually very close to going back to graduate school specifically to study this. I was actually accepted into a master's program at Dartmouth when in like the mid 2000s, where I was going to focus it around this course of study. And then my plan was to actually go do a PhD on this topic. I was trying to learn Latin at one point to be able to facilitate this, and all sorts of like dead languages. And then life took over and I just decided to go in a different direction. I don't think that in this lifetime that was actually really my path. It was just a topic that I was very interested in. I ended up deciding to, instead of going down that route, doing my PhD in industrial organizational psychology, I decided to continue working as an adult while I was doing my PhD because that's just what I decided to do. That was what I deemed important at that particular time. I have no regrets about the path that I took, but I share you that backstory because a lot of people seem to think that I hate Christians for some reason, or that I hate the idea of Jesus, or that I've never studied this, or that I don't understand it. And that's just fundamentally inaccurate. I've studied a lot of it. Now, it's been a while. I had to brush up for the purpose of this debate, because it's probably been at least 10 years since I picked up a Bible, and I was very, very lucky in my locals community, actually, a member of my locals, you guys have seen him on this channel, Truman, Return to Reason. I strongly recommend. I'll link Truman's channel in the description below because I strongly recommend you go check him out. He's one of the smartest people that I have the pleasure of knowing, and he actually has a background in this, and he was actually the one that helped me prep for this debate. So thank you, Truman. A tip of the hat to you, my friend. But I bring this up because, here is what I think about religion in general. I think you should be able to practice whatever religion you want as long as you're not hurting anyone. That's what I think. I don't care if you have some of the craziest fundamentalist beliefs in the world. I don't care. It doesn't matter if I agree with them or whether I don't. The First Amendment protects your right to practice your religion in the way you see fit, as long as you're not hurting anyone. That's the only thing. As long as you're not hurting anyone, then I don't really care. And by hurt, I don't mean emotional hurt, words or violence sort of thing. I mean actual physical hurt, right? So I believe that everyone of every faith should be able to practice their religion in this country. That is one of the things that we are founded on. That is in the First Amendment. It's what I kept saying in the debate over and over and over again. We don't have a state religion, and I will defend to the death your right to practice your religion, even if I don't agree with it. I don't have to agree with it. I don't have to. It's not my business. It's your business. It's your business and the business of your church and the business of your church elders. That is where you have those discussions. My beef with bringing Christianity into the political landscape is that it is a fundamentally different thing. We're talking about a political movement, not a religious movement. And so my concerns start to come up when Christians, and it's not even all Christians, because listen, there are a wide variety of Christian faiths in this country. There are a wide amount of interpretation, a wide array of how people practice. What tends to happen when Christianity, comes right into the political discussion is that it tends to be on the more extremist, fundamentalist end of it. And then they start trying to legislate their religious values against the First Amendment. Now, I'm not an atheist. People think that, for some reason, I don't know why some people think it's either you are a Christian or you are an atheist. I'm not. I commune with God on the daily, man. I'm a big fan. I'm a very, very deeply spiritual person. It's a little bit different than Christianity, but it's not, I absolutely believe in God. I meditate. That's my version of prayer, if you will, is meditation. I feel very comfortable with my relationship with God. I'm a big fan. I think everyone should have a little God in their lives, but I also respect the ability of atheists to not have God in their lives because that is their freedom. That is their choice. But the problem I have is when we start legislating religious values, because it is a losing proposition. Simply, it's a losing proposition. First of all, it violates the First Amendment because you're trying to force your religion on people who may not subscribe to your religion. It's not even that you're forcing your religion generally as Christianity, but it's that you're forcing your specific interpretation of Christianity onto other people who may or may not even agree with it, even if they would call themselves a Christian. Now, someone in my locals community asked me yesterday, they said, well, Carlin, if I oppose abortion, do you think that I'm legislating my values? And I said, no, I think that abortion, this is a human conversation that we could have. I have a lot of issues with where we are at in terms of that issue in this country right now. Listen, man, you don't have to be a Christian to think that the left has gone way too far when it comes to abortion. I think abortion is a really sad thing. I don't think that it's something that we should be doing once the child is close to being born. I don't think that they should be aborting kids after there's a botched abortion and the kid somehow survives. I don't think there should be partial birth. I don't think we should be doing any of that. That's insanity. That is simply a dehumanizing thing, right? I am in favor of reducing the amount of unwanted pregnancies. I'm in favor of reducing the amount of abortions by making sure that there are resources for women who would maybe have an abortion because of the financial repercussions of it. I'm in favor of, doing everything we can to, before it even gets to that point, making adoption a more viable option. That's cool with me too, man. But like, you don't have to be a Christian to agree with any of those things. Those are human values. And so I don't necessarily mean that specifically, but when you start taking things that are really, I'm sorry, like only relevant in the Bible and start trying to legislate them, that's where I start to have a little bit of a problem. That's why every time I see people say that, Christianity is what this country is founded on, well, I say, well, guess what? There were Jews when the country was founded, and they had all the rights that the Christians did, so how are you even making that argument? Just because the founders were Christians doesn't mean they didn't have the foresight to know that there were going to be, and already were, non-Christians in this country. So at the end of the day, when it comes to religion, I think that it is fine to hold the values you hold. I think it is fine to advocate for those values. I just don't think that your religion should take the place of a political movement. And what we should really all be fighting for at the end of the day is for every single person to have the type of government that allows them to practice their religion in the way that they best see fit, in conjunction with their church elders, their deacons, whatever. Like, that's the type of government that we should want. The one that allows you the liberty to worship however you want or not to worship at all. And that way, people, like, no one can intrude on what you do. No one can intrude on your values. No one can intrude to make you violate what you hold as your most dear values. That's the type of government I want, man. What bothers me is, as someone who has a more kind of, I don't even really talk about my spiritual values all that much. And there's a purpose for that. It's that they're mine, right? They're mine. Now, I might every once in a while say here and there dabble in what I think spiritually, but I always laugh when people say, well, Carlin, you're just trying to shove your values down our throats. Like, what are my values? You guys don't even know what they are. You don't even know what they are because they're mine, right? What really burns me though is when, and I'm sorry, it almost always 99% of the time comes from a Christian of some denomination, usually the more fundamentalist variety, where they try to say that I shouldn't be able to practice my spirituality. Well, guess what, man? You might have some crazy, crazy fundamentalist ideology. I'm still going to advocate for your right to be able to do whatever you want, as long as you're not hurting anyone else, as long as you're doing it within the privacy of your home, the privacy of your church, with your community. I think that's fine. That's what America was built on, right? But don't tell me that I'm not allowed to worship the way I want. Don't try to regulate my religion, which my religion is actually regulated in the United States. Things that I do as part of my spiritual practice are actually regulated by the government in the United States, which makes it actually pretty difficult to do it. It makes it hard. I have to get on airplanes. Sometimes I have to leave the dang country, which hasn't made it easy during the pandemic, I'll tell you what, because it is actually regulated here. And so, sometimes when I hear, and this is not going to, again, make the Christians happy, well, some of the Christians happy, when I hear that Christians are the put upon community in this country, I'm like, I can't go down the street and go to church. Like, that's not how it works. I have to get on a flippant airplane. Sometimes I have to leave the country altogether. Like, it's like, you're not the only ones that are put upon, man. Like, everyone has things. And, at the end of the day, what I would really like is to be part of a community of people that says, I don't care what your religion is. I will defend your right to worship God or not in any way that you choose. So, Christians, I got no beef with you, man. I do. Until you start legislating what I can do and how I can worship, like, that's when I start to have the complaint. But I will forever defend your right to follow whatever version you want. But that's a religious question. It is not a political question. These things are separate. And in order to have the type of government that allows us to both, go our separate ways when it comes times to commune with God, to worship, to have that type of government, we need to come together. And we need to vote together. Because the left wants to take all that away from us, man. That's what they want to do. The way you win elections is by creating a broad coalition of voters, is by getting more people on your team. It is not by excluding people. So for all of those who really think that the future of the MAGA movement is fundamentalist Christian, I mean, it's an interesting hill to die on. I guess we'll all have to give you a 21-gun salute for dying on that particular hill, but you're never going to win another election again. It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen, dude. Like, that's just not the way. And even within the MAGA movement, even there are conservative Christians. I talk to them every single day. They're like, yeah, we don't agree with that. Like, our religion is ours. It's not their business. So that's kind of where I'm at. I don't hate any religion. I think that every religion is fine as long as you're keeping it out of government and you're not sabotaging political movements when it comes to your faith. Now, you can advocate for your values, and I will always advocate for policies that allows you to practice your religious values without betraying them. Ain't no one gonna hold a gun to your head and force you to do something you don't want to do. Okay? I totally get that, and I agree with that. But there also has to be some give and take here where you have to respect people that don't agree with your religion, that have different values, and you have to protect their ability to practice their religion, their spirituality, in whatever it might be, man. Listen, on the first day of CPAC this year, because I was actually down there, I was actually listening to speeches early in the morning, and you know what the very first thing that they said was they welcomed all people of all faiths, and they even welcomed the atheists. They did. They even welcomed that, because even the CPAC community, the conservative movement, is aware that going forward, this movement has got to encompass as many people as possible, not just the ones who worship like you do. And we have to protect that right for each other. And I'm gonna end this by saying this. I have defended the rights of people to worship in ways that I don't agree with. I have never once, not once, that I can remember, and maybe I'm forgetting, so correct me if I'm wrong, and you've done this in the comments, but I cannot remember one time when a Christian has defended my right to worship the way I want to, and to commune with God the way I want to, and in doing what works for me. It hasn't happened. And maybe it's because you guys don't know exactly what my values are, and so it makes you a little squeamish that you don't know what they are, and so why would you defend them if you don't know what they are? Don't worry, I'm not doing anything evil, right? But it would be nice. It would be nice. Because I believe you guys should be able to do whatever you want to do, and I will protect that right with everything I have. But it would be nice if the favor was returned every once in a while. That's all I'm saying. All right, that's all my thoughts for right now. I'll see you guys soon.